This chair is so bloody comfortable. Anyway, legends. I'm not Cerberus. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be taking our first look at the Tier 7 Japanese Super Heavy Cruiser, Azuma. As always, if you want to skip ahead to any particular segment of the review, you can check the timestamps in the description below, but I don't think you'll need to, as this one should be quite short. And in keeping with the Cheshire review I did, I'll give a brief summary of the pros and cons of the ship, along with a summary of my thoughts before going to detail the ship's history, and then more detailed stats, consumable details, builds, and gameplay following that. First up, the pros of the ship. She's got large 310mm guns, which hit hard, with fantastic HE damage, high fire chance, and the ability to overmatch lower tier cruisers. She has 27mm bow and stern armour, decent casemate, and a thick armour plated belt, which offers solid protection against all but the largest of guns. When spec'd accordingly, she can pass 19km in gun range with high velocity shells and flat firing arcs. She also comes equipped with 3 repair party charges with a 40-second cooldown between uses for rapid recovery of health. And with every up, we must have a down, so here are what I feel are the ship's weaknesses. She has, quite frankly, a horrible 26-second base reload and a touch reverse speed that is worse than some battleships. Accuracy beyond 12km can be somewhat inconsistent, but you do have a number of shells to mitigate that. She's very large and very long, and as a first for non-tier 1 Japanese cruisers, she doesn't have any torpedoes. But is it any good? Well, I've seen mixed opinions in the community, some saying it's worse than what the ship is on PC, with others saying it's better. Personally, I feel it is just different, and all the better for it. Sure, she has a painfully long reload, the worst cruiser to traverse at this tier, and somewhat meh accuracy at a very long range, but this boat has a good deal of other stuff going for it as well. She's got strong armour, high hit points, comparatively high top speed, powerful long range guns that can make her a fearsome adversary for battleships and cruisers alike. Is she going to be the game changer that Yudachi, Kutuzov, Bart or Wichita were? Not in the slightest, but she'll be really annoying and quite deadly if she's left to her own devices. As we take a look at the ship's history and design, you may be thinking, but Serb, I haven't heard of a ship named Azuma in World War II before. And you'd be quite correct. That's because the ship only existed in preliminary blueprints. In reality, she was a series of design sketches and ideas, but no design was ever formally approved or finalised. Planning for the project, B-65, or Azuma as she is known in World of Warships, commenced in 1936 as part of the work to replace the 4 Kongo-class fast battleships which fronted the Yasen Butai or Night Battle Force. Restrictions imposed on Japan as a result of the various naval treaties at the time meant that Japan's reliance on its decisive battle doctrine, essentially building fewer but superior ships that outclassed those of rival nations, was all the more necessary for them to retain the upper hand in any upcoming conflicts. The ships were envisioned to be capable of up to 40 knots, be able to withstand 8-inch cruiser shells, as well as carry an armament of 3 triple 310mm guns, or 12.2 inches. Designs were drawn up in 1939 for 6 ships, however in 1940 Japan had learned that the specifications of the US Alaska-class cruisers resulted in a reorientation of principles from the Night Battle Force to developing a ship capable of countering those instead. The design featured 9 310mm guns mounted in 3 triple turrets, 16 100mm guns mounted in 8 twin turrets, with a smashing AA guns and protected by a 7.5-inch armour belt. The class were estimated to be able to achieve 34 knots, which meant they were a little faster than their US counterparts. In 1941, as the war with the US was being planned, priorities changed and the project was delayed. Following Japan's defeat at Midway, the project was revised further with approval given to designate 2 hull numbers, but the plan was soon put on indefinite hold and was taken no further, and the designs consolidated to the history books. Azuma's consumable selection is identical to that of Mogami, so you have 3 charges of a catapult fighter, 2 of sonar, cruise damage control party, plus repair party. Unlike Mogami, however, you get 3 repair parties and it has a much shorter cooldown of 40 seconds rather than the standard 60, allowing you to mitigate incoming damage more quickly. For my commander, personally I am using Azuma Atago, however she is not for everybody and not everybody has her, so my general recommendation for this ship would be Isuroko Yamamoto. The skills you'll need are Beyond Range, Igniter, essentially your choice for row 3, but for me I would use Punch Through. Row 4 would be Fixated and your legendary skills would be the Refill Station. Inspirations I am using are Lemony and Kuznetsov. This gives me a little less time being detected when I fire my guns and plenty of extra gun range to go with it. If you do have Azuma and Atago, then switch out Igniter for her special skill Molotov and then throw on Sponge onto the third row. Everything else remains the same. When it comes to the modules, I have gone Aiming Systems Mod 1, Steering Gears Mod 2, Steering Gears Mod 3 and Gunfire Control System Mod 2. All told, with a level 12 Legendary 1 Atago inspired by 15-2 Kuznetsov and Lemonier, Azuma can be quite the madam and a force to be reckoned with. She has a fairly chunky 52,500 hit points with 22% torpedo damage reduction. Her artillery stats are also pretty spicy, with a 19.1 km range, 25.2 second reload and a 40 second touch reverse time. The HE shells do 4,905 damage on sizzle hits with a 33% chance to set a fire. Should you want to slap the citadels of broadside ships, you can expect 8,150 damage, leaving them rethinking their life choices. The secondary battery, unfortunately, while you do have 8 twin turrets, they are only 100mm and have a firing range of 5.3 kilometers. Because of the way penetration mechanics work, they are effectively only useful for fires, but you can expect a 12% chance of fire from those. No torpedoes on Azuma, so unusually for a Japanese cruiser, we'll skip straight over to the maneuverability. Azuma makes a fairly respectable 35 knots with relative ease, but does lose a fair bit of speed in the turn. Keep in mind that despite the double rudder, you're not going to be turning very quickly, with 6.7 seconds for the rudder shift, and because of her size, 920 meters on a turning circle. Despite the large profile of the ship, however, she is reasonably stealthy, coming in at 12.1 kilometers with her camouflage on. Alaska, which is a tier above I must admit, clocks in at 12.7, so there's a chunk difference between the two ships, but she is noticeably less concealed than other Tier 7 cruisers. Air detection radius is 7.6 kilometers, which means that planes will still be able to spot you before you see them, so keep that in mind, and I wouldn't count on remaining in the smoke screen undetected because you have a 10.2 kilometer firing penalty. When it comes to playstyle and strategy, there are two which I have identified myself, and it depends entirely on what enemies you come across, which is not too dissimilar to Wichita and Baltimore. If the ships on the enemy team are primarily 15-inch guns and below, you can make cautious pushes with your battleships, using them for cover and allowing them to tank most of the incoming fire, whilst you angle against anything that breaks through. You'll be in a good spot to help deal with any unexpected destroyer threats and also give them extra fire support. Just don't go full YOLO because you'll die horribly. If you're going against T7 cruisers and any battleships, unless they are broadside, load up that HE and unleash hell. Be sure to spread your aim out a bit though, because you want to avoid saturating the target too much, and you also want to get those lovely fires. A fairly reliable strategy is to shoot the superstructure and then the bow and alternate between the two. You should be getting fairly reliable chunks of 7,000 to 9,000 damage per HE salvo. If on the other hand you come across a bow tanking T6 cruiser or any ship that's showing you a nice flat broadside, preferably within a range of 8 kilometers, get ready to introduce them to those 310mm AP shells, and they should punch straight through any armour up to 21mm thick regardless of any angle, and reach out and touch your enemy's no-no square with ease. When you are pushing, you need to try and keep a good angle on as many targets as possible to avoid penetrations. You are still a cruiser after all. It is inevitable that you will take some damage, but you do have 3 rapid reloaded repair parties on hand, and just remember you are also a pretty big ship. Should you get into a game where you're only against T7s and above, with targets armed with 16-inch guns, don't even think of trying to push and be your team's vanguard. You want to sit towards the back, kite away, and loiter with intent, preferably sticking to one of the flanks, and keeping an eye out for any incoming shells and to try and get as much early warning as possible for evading wherever you can. As already mentioned, you want to spend most of your time flinging 12-inch burning shells of hatred across the map at enemies if they're doing anything other than presenting a flat broadside. Remember to pepper your targets across the whole hills to avoid saturation and keeping them burning. Remember, 35% fire chance with Azulane Atago, it is no joke. Unlike say Cheshire, who only has 6 shells firing at once, you can certainly make attempts at neutralising any pesky destroyers that appear, as you do have 50% more guns. They'll eventually learn not to be derping around in the open. Speaking of open, because she has high velocity flat trajectory shells, you can't really sit behind islands hurling shells over the entire game and expect to hit targets as you would with the Cleveland or Alaska. You need to keep moving. If you use refill station, it might be an idea not to stray too far away from an ally, as you can easily get those guns firing past 20 kilometers. Once all the big boys have been taken out, you can then make pushes as mentioned beforehand. But just don't go alone, take support and remember to give that booty wiggle to bounce the AP. So, to recap. A ship with powerful long-range guns, decent armour and high hit points, somewhat held back by a long reload and touch reverse times. Azuma plays much better than her stat would lead you to believe. And on that note, time to end. Thank you all for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please do hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow and helps the YouTube algorithms. And I'll also pop up on your feed whenever I upload in the future. Take care. Bye for now. I'll catch you next time.